Make your next move with American Express Business Platinum. You'll get 5 times membership rewards points on flights and prepaid hotels booked on AmexTravel.com. Plus, enjoy access to the American Express Global Lounge Collection. And with the welcome offer of 150,000 points, your business can soar to all new heights. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-platinum. Amex Business Platinum. Built for business by American Express.
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Can I make my side softer?
Can I make my side firmer? Can we sleep cooler?
Sleep Number does that. Cools up to 8 times faster and lets you choose your ideal comfort on either side. Your Sleep Number setting. And now save 50% on the new Sleep Number limited edition smart bed. Limited time. Exclusively at a Sleep Number store near you. Learn more at sleepnumber.com.
Hello and welcome to the Paddock and The Pavilion, with me, your host, Stephen Wallis. It's been a busy time on the show as I build up to the historic match between the Afghanistan Women's 11 and the Cricket Without Borders 11 at the Junction Oval in Melbourne on January the 30th. Alongside this, I've been working on my series about Shazia Rahman Zazai, the ex-Afghanistan women's captain who will be taking the field in this landmark game. And who better to join me for this episode than Clare Cannon, founder and one of the driving forces behind Cricket Without Borders. Clare explains the excellent work Cricket Without Borders does in providing opportunities for young women in cricket. Clare brings passion, experience and a deep love for the game as she shares her own cricketing journey and all the details behind this historic match. Hello, Clare. Welcome to the Paddock and the Pavilion.
Thank you, Stephen. Great to be here.
You must be happy. We're recording on the 14th of January, and Australia have won the second match in the Women's Ashes.
Very happy, and particularly happy to see former Cricket Without Borders player Alana King bowl so well and do so well. So, yeah, it's and also very happy to have people call me and chat and have a lot of interest from all sections of society in the game. It's fantastic how many people are interested in this series.
It must be really big out there in Australia than the Women's Ashes.
Well, I think it is big, and the Ashes, as we know, can be very contentious, as we've seen, but a fantastic rivalry. And I think the thing that everyone's really looking forward to is the first test at the MCG since the 1950s. So that's just super exciting.
Shows the growth of the women's game in the, say, the last decade, really, since the WBBL started. Absolutely.
I remember before we started Cricket Without Borders, before the WBBL, and I remember going to the MCG, and there'd been female athletes at the Commonwealth Games at the MCG, and we were thinking, when will women ever play again at the MCG? It was so rare they ever did. And now it's so exciting that this Women's Ashes test is going to be played at this very hallowed ground, and it's seen as absolutely where it should be played.
You mentioned there Cricket Without Borders. You're the founder of Cricket Without Borders. Before we go on to talk about that and what it does and where it started and everything else, I'd like to find a bit more about your own cricketing background. How did you first get into cricket? I do know some of this, but for listeners.
Well, firstly, I'm not a cricketer. I've never played, apart from a bit of beach cricket, where I managed to knock my friend's father out. But my father was passionate cricketer, and I remember growing up listening to ABC radio with the cricket on. But I suppose somewhere it's in the genes, because my great uncle Joe Darling captained Australia at the turn of the previous century. So somewhere along the line, I think it's come into the genes, and I can't describe why I love it. I just love the game.
I did do a little bit of digging. I had heard of Joe Darling being a bit of a cricket sort of tragic myself, and one of the games he played in was he played in the first test of the 1899 series. We're going back a bit here, which was great at Trent Bridge, which was W.G. Grace's last test and Wilfred Rhodes' first test.
That's right, and he played obviously with Grace. I have a bat of his signed by Ranjit Singhji, and he also played in Philadelphia at the Germantown ground. And in fact, their team lost in Philadelphia. And last October, I actually went to Philadelphia to the C.C. Morris Library, which is a great, has all the records of all the international cricket matches that have been played in Philadelphia, and just learnt so much about how big cricket was there too. So, my Joe Darling's father was a staunch Presbyterian. Joe didn't smoke or drink, but he had 14 children. Well, his wife had 14 children, but his father didn't like him playing the game. He actually bought him a farm in Tasmania called Stonehenge, and he left captaining in Australia in the middle of a series. So anyway, he captained one more, but yes, his father wasn't very approving.
Not having played, but you do watch and listen to the radio a lot of following cricket.
Absolutely. It's the sound of summer. I find that for me, cricket is particularly when I'm at the ground, at my home ground, the MCG. And what's wonderful about the Boxing Day Test, you have, the first holy day Christmas, and then the second holy day is Boxing Day at the MCG on the sacred ground of Melbourne. So it for me, it's part of that whole Christmas festivities. So, and when cricket is on, I just feel, the sky is blue, grass is green, God is in his heaven, and all is well with the world.
Well, you're lucky, because I did go to a Boxing Day Test in 1998, but unfortunately got to the ground and was there for probably about, an hour, 2 hours, and they didn't bowl a ball, and I went shopping then, so.
These things happen. Mostly not in Melbourne, mostly in Sydney or Brisbane.
And then the next day the weather was glorious. So
sometimes it's 38 degrees as well.
But your connection with cricket, you have been a committee member at the Melbourne Cricket Club as well.
That's correct, yes. I joined the Melbourne Cricket Club probably about 10 years ago, and I was the fourth woman on the Melbourne Cricket Club. It was a fantastic experience, and also the first woman to sit on the cricket subcommittee. So even though Melbourne Cricket Club had 150 years pretty much of men's cricket, it was only in the last 12 years or so that maybe 14 years that MCC set up a women's team. And I have twin daughters, and they were the first two girls to sign up to the women's team at the MCC. And in fact, the women's team's been super successful at the MCC. And last season, they won the premiership in the firsts, the seconds, and the thirds.
Must have been a challenge being a woman when you first went onto the committee.
Yeah, it's a very masculine environment. But what was fantastic is that, there's a lot of women members now. I'd come through the path of the Women of the MCC, which was a group to really bring the women members together, and so that they could go together to the football instead of finding a man to go to the cricket or the football with. And so I had such fantastic support from the membership and enjoyed so many functions with the membership. It was a great experience. And
I'm guessing your husband must like cricket.
No, he's a rower. You might get him to watch, but that's enough, which is not my favourite thing. But no, we do watch football together, Aussie rules together, but cricket, no. He's watched a little bit.
And you said off air, and I know this, you're also a farmer. I don't know how you find time to do all these things.
Well, yes, I'm a farmer. I'm a farmer on the New South Wales-Victorian border, which is sort of halfway between Sydney and Melbourne. It's a family farm, which I took over from my mother. and we're wool producers, and we also had grass-fed only beef. And our wool goes direct with open and accountable supply lines to companies like North Face, Helly Hansen, Stella McCartney. So it's great. It's a tough business.
Keeps you busy.
Yes.
And my research revealed that you had some royal visitors to the farm. Is that right?
Absolutely. In 1983, Princess Diana, Prince Charles, as they were then, and Prince William came to Womagama. And what was wonderful was she landed in Womagama, landed in Albury, and broke the drought. And people are dancing in the rain. They all credited Princess Diana for breaking the drought. And story goes that Prince William took his first steps at Womagama. He was 9 months.
I thought I'd get that in. I never thought I'd get Prince William and the late Princess Diana on the Paddock and the Pavilion podcast.
It's a pity they don't go to the cricket more often.
Let's move on to Cricket Without Borders. You're the founder of Cricket Without Borders. When did that start, and how did that all come about?
So we took our first tour in 2011. So what happened was my son had been on a school cricket tour to England for 3 weeks, and he'd played in a lot of boys' schools in England. He'd played on village greens. They had played all over England. It was the most extraordinary experience, and stayed in boarding schools, and it was an incredible experience. And I had twin daughters who were in the Cricket Victoria Academy, and in the sort of under 18s. And in this academy, well, Lana King was in that academy. There were some terrific girls. They were very good cricketers. And I just felt it was totally unfair. There was no opportunities for these young women. And in the end, I ended up working with Ken Jacobs, the former CEO, long-standing CEO of Cricket Victoria. And we took our first tour to England for 3 weeks. I don't even know what I was thinking, but we played in girls' teams, we played boys' teams. We were the second women to play at Eton. We played the Melbourne Grammar younger team at Eton, thrashed them. But we also played at Wellington College. We had some players play for the Australia House team. We stayed in a college in Cambridge University and played the Cambridge women's team. It was the most incredible experience. And in the end, we came back via Singapore, and we were the first international team to play the Singapore women's team. And then we played a mixed team at the Singapore Cricket Ground. And we were the first young women to ever play at the Singapore Cricket Ground. And the Singapore Cricket Ground is actually a fascinating place to play cricket, because you lose the ball in the skyscrapers at times. But they have a wonderful motto that the curry after the game is as important as the game. So anyway, we had this incredible tour, and I said I was never going to do it again. And then Singapore asked us to a tour to go back and play Japan, Singapore, Thailand, Hong Kong, and someone else perhaps. And it was the most fantastic experience. So yeah, Thailand, yeah.
So these are young players from around the whole of Australia?
Mostly, particularly early on, they were Victorian players, and mostly country players. There was a couple of Cricket Victoria representatives in Gippsland and in Western Victoria, so Eastern and Western Victoria, who really promoted the women's game. So there was a lot of young women out of country Victoria. We have now also had women from the ACT, from Perth and from New South Wales, but they're mostly Victorian.
And are you a charity?
We are a community organisation, not for profit. The girls pretty much pay most of their own way. And so we go we're very economical in the way we travel, and we give the girls enough time to earn their own money, to raise the money to go. We get some small donations from businesses and individuals who support us, and I'm the other supporter of the organisation. So, yes, we don't get any government funding or Cricket Australia funding or Cricket Victoria funding or anything.
Your first tour was to England, but you've been to quite a few places since then. I know last year you went to Malaysia, didn't you?
Yes, we've been all through the Pacific. We've been to Fiji, Samoa, Vanuatu, and we've been to Hong Kong, to Darwin, last year Malaysia, and also Japan. So the last year Malaysia was a terrific tour. They've got an under-19 Women's World Cup this year, and they were brilliant hosts. We played in KL, in Ipoh and Penang, and we always take, when we go on tour, we always go to the Australian High Commission. They normally host us, and the Australian High Commission is very strong, particularly through the Pacific, about supporting young women. And the Australian government has a sports diplomacy program in the Pacific to really get young women into sport, which is really helps in some prevention towards family violence. But so we had a wonderful event in KL with the Australian High Commissioner, and in Penang we went to a government school, not a private school, with very multiracial student body, and did some cricket clinics with them. And what was great was they knew we were coming, so they had to set up a girls' cricket team. So it's fantastic, and really, it's really important in these countries where boys get a better chance at sport, that they can see young women play cricket and they have role models.
So how do you get the players to go on the tour? Are you approaching them or are they approaching you?
Mostly they approach us, and then we have people who recommend young women. So we know coaches in different areas who recommend people. But mostly people find us through our Facebook page, through word of mouth, and through their coaches.
And as you said before, Alana King was one of those players. You must be delighted with the progress she's made all around the world playing cricket for Australia and in franchise tournaments.
Yes, no, she's fantastic. So she came on our first tour in 2011, and then she was in the Cricket Victoria Academy. Well, she was in the actual Cricket Victoria rookie squad. And anyway, she got dumped from the rookie squad, and she was doing her final year at school at the time, so perhaps a little unfairly. And she was about to go and play baseball for Australia. And I said to Ken, we can't let this happen. So we ended up taking her as a scholarship position to go to the tour we played in Japan, where we were an invitational side, and it was a T20 World Cup qualifier with Cook Islands, Samoa, Japan, Papua New Guinea, and us. So and then she ended up. We have a internship with Cricket Japan, where every year one of our players goes and works with Cricket Japan to help promote the game in Japan. So Alana did the internship and ended up coming to Samoa with us again, and then she got picked up again by Cricket Victoria, and the rest is history. But I always feel very proud that we kept her in the game.
Yeah, it's interesting when you mentioned in Japan there. I've spoken to Shizuka Miyashi, who played for Japan and also played at Fairbreak.
Oh, there's some fantastic cricketers in Japan. And what was interesting, when we first went to Japan, we observed it was much more hit and run, a bit more like softball or baseball, but then not like that now. And the women's team, are very accomplished.
The other person you mentioned was Ken Jacobs, and I have listened to some of the podcasts that Ken's done. I've listened to the one he did with Cheryl Rogers, who's also been on the podcast. Someone else. I've listened to 2 or 3 of his podcasts.
Yeah, no, they're fantastic. It was something that we set up during COVID, and it's amazing what wonderful women there are around the world supporting the game in various different ways, whether it's playing, whether it's administration. Uniform is another one we're really big on, about providing uniforms, especially for women, that are flattering for women and that are not small sizes of men's uniforms. But also he's interviewed men who, are really supportive of women's cricket. So, yeah, it's great. He's had some very interesting interviews.
So how many of you are there when we're talking about Cricket Without Borders? Is it just Clare Cannon and Ken Jacobs?
Yes, and we have two others who have come on all our tours who've been wonderful supporters. We have Elizabeth Sile, who is a teacher, and she's great when we need her teacher, the teacher's voice to come out. And we have another friend of mine who's a cricket tragic, who's an art historian, but we always call her the cultural attaché. So we have, it's really, but basically Ken and I are the crux of the organisation. And it's wonderful working with just someone who's as passionate about women's cricket as Ken is. Ken's got 4 daughters, and it's very nimble because you don't have to go through big bureaucracies. You can make your own decisions. He's an absolute champion to work with, and he's mentored so many people, including myself, and he does it in such a way that you don't even know you're being mentored. He's certainly given a lot of career advice to Alana King in the early days.
I've just looked up the other 2 I've listened to are Megan Ponsford, related to
yes.
Bill Ponsford,
yes.
and Lauren Jacobs as well.
Yes, that's right. So Megan Ponsford is a good friend of mine. I still sit on the Literary Advisory Committee of the Melbourne Cricket Club, and we produce every year some books around the MCC or the ground or related to the membership. And Megan's written a wonderful book about her uncle and a tour they went to, the first tour, invitational tour that went to India from Australia. She's a fascinating historian.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first, like to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
You're a startup founder. Finding product market fit is probably your number one priority. But to land bigger customers, you also need security compliance. Obtaining your SOC 2 or ISO 27001 certification can open those big doors, but they take time and energy, pulling you away from building and shipping. That's where Vanta comes in. Vanta is the all-in-one compliance solution helping startups get audit ready and build a strong security foundation quickly and painlessly. Vanta automates the manual security tasks that slow you down, helping you streamline your audit. The platform connects you with trusted experts to build your program, auditors to get you through audits quickly, and a marketplace for essentials like pen testing. So whether you're closing your first deal or gearing up for growth, Vanta makes compliance easy. Join over 8,000 companies, including Y Combinator and Techstar startups who trust Vanta. For a limited time, get $1,000 off Vanta at vanta.com/simplify. That's VANTA.com/simplify for $1,000 off.
Moving on now to this match that Cricket Without Borders are about to stage against an Afghan women's 11 on the 30th of January. Can you let listeners know more about this match? I know a little bit myself, but can you fill us in with all the details?
Well, it's a super exciting match. So we've had a little bit to do with some of the Afghani women who've come to Australia. One of the women who was very involved in bringing them out, Emma Staples, we have had close ties with her over the years. And we actually took one of the young women, Banasha, to Fiji on a tour in 2022. On a scholarship. So what happened was Nick Hockley approached Ken and said, would we be interested in playing this match? And so we've tried so many things with Cricket Australia, so it was a wonderful surprise when he approached us and said, would we be interested to play? And I think for us, it's a wonderful fit for a number of reasons. First of all, our cricketers are good cricketers, and the Afghani women are not, elite cricketers. They're good cricketers. They obviously haven't had near the opportunities that Australian cricketers have had to be coached during their career. So I think that will make a nice, tight match. The other thing that's so exciting about this is wherever we go with Cricket Without Borders, we're about developing young women. And I always say we're not there to win. We love to win. we're about developing these young women as players, and we're about developing them as people. And I think part of the match with this Afghani team is exactly the same thing. So it's super exciting. It's at the Junction Oval, which is Melbourne's number 2 oval. It's the home of Cricket Victoria, and Cricket Australia are supporting it. They're funding it. They're bringing all the young Afghani women down from Canberra, many of them in Canberra, about half in Canberra, half in Melbourne. We get to train together, and we get to have a meal together the night before. We play a 2020 match in the morning, and then we go on to watch this test in the MCG hosted by Cricket Australia. So it's such an incredible opportunity for our girls. It's a privilege to play these young women who are quite extraordinary young women, and to hear their stories of how they left Afghanistan and their journey here and what they've achieved since they've been here. It's really incredible.
Yeah, I can certainly back up what you say there, because I've spoken to and I'm in contact with Shazia Rahman Zazai, who's actually playing first grade now in Campbelltown,
yes, which
in
is
Sydney.
fantastic. Yeah.
And her story is well, it's quite amazing. We just can't understand, or even attempt to understand, what it must have been like for them to leave their own country and then settle in another planet to start with, and then play cricket and develop as people and everything else. And
let alone the family members they've lost over the years. I mean, I think that's, one thing. And I know, I think about Banasha when I was sitting next to her on the airplane. Her first flight was on, an RAAF Hercules transport plane. And so, it's extraordinary. It's extraordinary. And I think what we're very excited about on our tour to Malaysia, we made friendship bracelets with the Malaysian teams we played, and our assistant team manager is doing this, and as well for our girls. And we have a motto at Cricket Without Borders is be bold, show sportsmanship, make friends, have fun. And many of our players are still in contact via Facebook with players they've played around the world many years ago. So I think that it's a great story of how cricket is an international language.
It can only bring harmony really to nations around the world when everyone's playing sport. That's what the good thing about sport, isn't it?
Yeah, and a number of years ago, I went to it was a long time ago, Afghanistan UAE match at the same Junction Oval. And this was before Afghanistan became the cricket power that they are and had those wonderful players in the BBL. And Melbourne has quite a big Afghani community. So it was just fantastic to see them all out and really being proud of their heritage.
Cricket Australia have done an awful lot for the young Afghan players as well, haven't they? Bringing them out there and supporting them.
They have. I think they've done a lot behind the scenes, and my job is not to talk politics, but they have to work within the confines of what the ICC says, and so they're doing what they can to support these young women, to promote them as cricketers, and to show that as they have with the Australian women's team, that they'll give the same opportunities to the women as where they can as the men.
And after the 2020 match, you're all going to go off to the women's test match.
We are, and it's going to be it's such an historic moment. And so just when we're going to hear the national anthems, and we're going to hopefully have a lot of people at the ground. So hosted by Cricket Australia, I think it's going to be a very special moment.
You must be really proud as the founder to be staging this match on the 30th of January.
Well, who would have thought? I mean, I suppose I got so frustrated over the years with bureaucracy. I just worked outside bureaucracy, and I think often we were, seen as a little something over the side. And so to have this moment where Cricket Australia has chosen us has been a great endorsement for a huge amount of volunteer work over the years. Our first team manager was Mel Jones. So there's been another of our team managers was Sarah Elliott, who scored 100 in England in that test match in England many years ago now. And she'd been up in the night 4 times breastfeeding her son before she scored 100. And in fact, she came to Singapore as our team manager and she was pregnant. And she said, "Do you still want me?" I go, "Well, you're not in the nets. Of course I want you." But Cricket Australia had no pregnancy leave, maternity leave policy at that stage. So it just shows how times have changed.
Just going off at a complete tangent here, being a cricket fan like you are, I've got to ask you, what do you think? What do you think to Bazball?
Oh, wow. Okay.
We're getting ahead for the Ashes, you see, so I've got to get this in.
I was a big fan of Brenda McCullum once upon a time, and I have always loved the New Zealand cricket team. I think they carry themselves very well. I wasn't such a big fan of Brenda McCullum after the Ashes and the Carey Joss Butler incident.
Bairstow.
Bairstow, sorry. I think, look, it's.
I didn't go that day. I wasn't there that day. I went on the first day. So just to.
Oh my gosh! It was quite something. Look, I think it's fun to watch. Frankly, personally, I'd rather win the matches.
So are you confident that Australia can defend the Ashes this year?
Well, I'm not that confident because I think we've got a lot of aging players. So I think we've got to change our batting lineup.
Yeah, the last test you had no player aged 20 in the whole 11, did you? No player in the 20s.
No player in the 20s. No. So I don't know what they're going to do, but somehow they tend to pull a rabbit out of the hat. But I think these aging players, we might need a few moves.
So what did you think to Sam Constas then?
Well, I think he's a bit like Bazball. He's great for cricket, isn't he? And certainly, I wasn't there at his first innings, but boy, oh boy, I rushed down to his second innings. And so he's playing with that freedom that England plays with, I suppose. And what was so fantastic is he brought that vitality to the rest of the cricketers, to the rest of the team, who are probably a little bit jaded over many years of cricket. It was just a brilliant thing to watch, and it brought people back to the game, brought young people back to the game, particularly to Test cricket. So he was fantastic to watch.
Let's get back to Cricket Without Borders. What's the future for Cricket Without Borders?
Oh, I don't know, Stephen. I mean, I've got 3 daughters. And I brought up 3 daughters, and I love my daughters. I've also got a son, but I love my daughters. But spending your life with teenage girls is like, it has its challenges, right? And so at some stage I'm like, maybe I've done this. But every time I think I can't possibly take another tour, we have a tour and things come together, and we do some exciting things. So I don't know where our next tour is going to be, or I think we've had a lot of attention on this Afghani game, and there's some talk perhaps there might be more than one. There might be one next year. Who knows? But look, I think Ken's not going to stop touring. So we've talked about Hong Kong. We're looking back in the Pacific again. So not quite sure where we'll go yet. So, yeah.
And Ken's going to continue with the excellent podcasts.
Look, Ken is not stopping the podcast. He's got a great voice for radio, and we love it. And he's always surrounded by a bevy of women or interviewing them, and he just does brilliantly.
Well, thank you very much for being on the Paddock and the Pavilion. It's been a real pleasure. The very best of luck for the game on the 30th of January. enjoy the match, and also enjoy
Yeah.
the day at the test match at the MCG.
Wonderful. Thank you, Stephen, and thank you for having me.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
The NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets. Guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. 21 plus and present in select states. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.